Hare Krishna. May Krishna bless you, protect you, and maintain you. Thank you for attending this wonderful temple. The temple now with Sri Sri RadhaRaman, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, Gaur Nitai, Nrsimha Bhagavan, Ganesh Ji, Hanuman Ji, Durga Mata, Shiva Shambhu. We have everything that we could possibly want. And we're going to get more. Yes. So, everyone should be happy. I know the news on the TV is not happy news. But here, when you come to the temple, happy news. And not only that, too often on the TV there is what is called fake news. But when you come to this temple, not only do you not get fake news, you get absolute news. You get the absolute truth. Why? Because we get Shastra. Krishna, in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, after discussing the qualities, 26 qualities of the devotee, and then most of the chapter is describing the demoniac mentality. After all that, Krishna makes a very important point, that there are 3 gates leading to Naraka, hell: lust, anger, greed. If you avoid those 3 dwaras, or gates or doors, then you will escape hell. Then after that, Krishna says that those who are not pious, those who are impious, they do not follow Shastra. And those who are pious, they follow Shastra. And Krishna sums up the chapter. Don't act whimsically. Act according to the Shastra. In India, everybody is very well familiar with Bhagavad Gita, which our spiritual master Prabhupada writes, if there's only one book to read, let it be Bhagavad Gita. That one book will suffice, he says. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of Shastras, but Bhagavad Gita is called Gita Upanishad. What is Gita? It is the essence of the entire Vedic knowledge, the essence. So, the compiler, as Krishna says in Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishta matak smitir jnanam apohanancha. And then after that he says, Vedaischa sarvayar aham eva vedya vedanta krid veda vid eva chaham. Krishna says, oh, you think you have studied the Vedas? If you have actually studied the Vedas, then you should come to me, Krishna says. You should find me. I am actually the end of the Vedas. And then he said, Vedanta vid, Vedanta krid. Krishna says, I know what is Vedanta because I'm the compiler of Vedanta. Vedanta, Veda, Anta. 2 words. The end of knowledge. Not that knowledge just keeps going on and on and on with no conclusion. Vedanta is that section which deals with the conclusion of the Vedas, 108 Upanishads, the Puranas, Itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. The conclusion is known as Vedanta. And Krishna says, I compiled that Vedanta. In what form? In my form as Srila Vyasadeva. He is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. Now, Vyasadeva, even though he's described as Bhagavan Rishi, God in the form of a saintly person, and even though you will see in the Bhagavatam that Vyasadeva is described as a Bhagavan, as the incarnation of Narayana, still Vyasadeva has a guru. So just think, even the incarnation of God has a guru. So if you are reluctant to accept a guru, are you better than Vyasadeva? Are you better than Ram? Ram had a guru. Even Krishna had two gurus. He had Garga Acharya, Garga Muni, and he also had Sandipani Muni. Ramachandra also had a guru. So, anyone who thinks, no, I don't need a guru, you should learn from the examples. God himself, who's omniscient, sets the example by surrendering to a guru. So, Vyasadeva has his guru. Narada-muni bhajaya vina RadhaRaman name. Vyasadeva's guru is Narada-muni. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is the history of how Narada came to the rescue of Vyasadeva. Because one day Vyasadeva woke up and he was feeling something was missing. We've all gone through that in our lives from time to time. You wake up one day and you realize something's missing, something's not right. So that happened to Vyasadeva. And he was contemplating, was it this reason? Was it that reason? Then Narada immediately appeared on the scene. And Vyasadeva very humbly said to his guru, Narada-ji, please find out the root cause of my dissatisfaction. Root, mula. So the guru will immediately point out the defect in the disciple. And what did Narada say to Vyasa? Yes, Vyasadeva, you have edited the 4 Vedas, you have compiled 108 Upanishads, you have compiled the Puranas, and you also created the great work Mahabharata. Why are you despondent? I'll tell you why. You forgot to glorify Krishna and put him in his proper position as the supreme. That's what you failed to do. Yes, Krishna is mentioned in Mahabharata and other Puranas, but people can become confused. Therefore, Narada said, you now compile Srimad Bhagavatam and explain one line. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That it is Krishna who is the original source of all incarnations, all deities, all energies. Everything comes from Krishna or Vasudeva. Everybody say, yes. The opening line of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses. What's the first line? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The absolute truth. What is absolute truth? That I could give a whole week's seminar on that topic. Break it down, simplify it. Absolute truth is that from which everything comes, that which everything is sustained or maintained, and when the cosmic manifestation is wound up, it enters into the absolute truth. The absolute truth is ablative, causative, and locative. From, by, and into. So, on Narada's instructions, Vyasadeva began to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he taught it to his son Shukadeva, who then taught it to Maharaj Parikshit, and that is the version we have, the 18,000 shlokas. Originally, for Lord Brahma, only 4 verses, Chatushloki. Brahma, being the most intelligent person, only requires 4 shlokas. We need 18,000 to understand the absolute truth. Brahma just needed 4. Hare Krishna. So Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, and that was his mature work, his final composition, his masterpiece. Narada, his guru, also has sutras. Vyasadeva, before Bhagavatam, compiled the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra is in 4 parts. 2 parts deals with Sambandha, our eternal relationship with God. 1 chapter deals with Abhideya, practical activities once you understand that you have an eternal relationship of service to God. And then the last chapter, Prayojana. What is the result? What is the fruit? And that, of course, prema, love of God. And that is the real religion. The real religion is not Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist. No. The real religion, love of God. As I have said throughout 30 years of preaching, you may follow a particular religion. You may belong to a particular club. You may be following a certain process. All well and good. But the question you have to ask yourself, by this yoga or by this dharma or by this religion, am I developing my dormant love of God? That's the question has to be asked. That happened to me in my life. I was not raised Hindu, but at the age of 22, 23, like Vyasadeva, I was dissatisfied. Then I came upon my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, and I started to read his books. Now I was no longer confused. Now I was no longer despondent. And questions were being answered that I didn't even know I should ask. So, when you come to the Vedic knowledge, especially Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you're at the postgraduate study of the science of God. Yes. One time I was lecturing in Cal State, LA. That's in East LA, Cal State. Professor Wilson would invite us every semester. She was doing a course on comparative religion, so she would invite me or someone else. And one time I was explaining how we follow the science of God. And one lady in the audience said, "What are you talking about, science? Science means biology, chemistry, this and that." I said, "Yes, that's all right. But this Bhagavad Gita is also a science of self-realization." How is it a science? In science, you follow certain procedures, you get a predictable result. 2-part hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. What we really need right now, all in California, water. That's what we need. Water. We're running out. We better be praying. We better be praying because we're running out of water. The pipeline is drying up. You better pray to, I'm not joking. I keep my eye on the news. The water is drying up like never before. So that is science. Follow the procedure, you get a predictable result. So I explained to the lady, you follow this Bhagavad Gita, you will get self-realization. So tonight, I'd like to begin a series of lectures on Narada-bhakti-sootras. Vyasadeva wrote the Vedanta Sutra, but his guru has Bhakti-sutras. Sutra, a code. Maximum information, minimum words. That's a sutra. Yes, sutra also means thread. But here the context is maximum knowledge, minimum words. Ata ataha bhaktim vyakasama. Narada says, now, therefore, I will try to explain the process of devotional service. Devotional service manifests as the most elevated, pure love for God. Exactly what I said. Narada is beginning his book by emphasizing this point. If you do devotional service, which you're doing right now, hearing, unless you're sleeping. But if you're hearing, you are engaged in the first item of devotional service. I'm doing the second, kirtanam, speaking, chanting, describing, glorifying. So if we cooperate, if you listen with attention, and if I speak from the heart, and if I don't have any ulterior motive, then this will be a very satisfactory spiritual rasa, exchange. This pure love for God is eternal. He uses the word amrita swarupacha. Yes. Same thing Krishna says several times in Bhagavad Gita. This knowledge is eternal. It's amrita, deathless nectar. All the COVID patients, if they could only take deathless nectar. But people who are less intelligent are taking horse medicine and killing themselves. This is called Mahatama Gun, the greatest ignorance. Crazy. In fact, one newspaper in the Midwest had a headline on their newspaper, "You are not a horse." Still, the stupid people are taking it, and they're winding up in the hospital. No, what they need is amrita, deathless nectar. That deathless nectar is available to you. That's why we chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The more you chant, the more you will come in contact with this deathless nectar. Fill up your ears with deathless nectar. Now Narada says, upon achieving that stage of transcendental loving service in pure love of God, a person becomes perfect, deathless, and peaceful. So these are the 3 benefits, Narada says, of achieving love of God. You become perfect. You become immortal. Meaning, you don't have to come back to this material world and do it all over again. No, you go to the spiritual abode where Radha and Krishna are and become one of their associates. That is peace. Next, Narada says, a person engaged in such pure devotional service neither desires anything for material sense gratification, never laments for any material loss, doesn't hate anything material, does not enjoy anything simply on one's personal account, and also does not become very enthusiastic in material activity. So here's another aspect of science. Here, Narada Muni is pointing out how to tell somebody who is advanced. You can tell by the symptoms. Just like this month, I have to go see 2 different doctors. So I had a CT scan, and so they're going to show me this, that, the other thing, and there'll be a consultation. And the doctor will also judge by symptoms. He'll ask me, do you feel like this? Is this like this? And based on the symptoms, he will make a diagnosis. So in the same way, you can tell who is advanced spiritually by their symptoms, how they behave. So here it is. Such a person is not hankering for material sense gratification, does not lament material loss, doesn't hate anything, and doesn't become enthusiastic in what the materialists are enthusiastic about. Narada continues, one who understands perfectly the process of devotional service in love of God becomes intoxicated in its discharge. So here is legal intoxication. Here in America or most countries, if you take certain kinds of intoxication, you can be arrested, put in jail. But this intoxication, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, their deity forms are like this. They're ecstatic. And the descriptions of Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he was ecstatic in love of God. So yes, you too can become intoxicated in devotional service. Sometimes one becomes stunned in ecstasy and thus enjoys one's whole self being engaged in the service of the Supreme Self. So the Supreme Self is Krishna. We have an eternal relationship with the Supreme Self. And you can enjoy your constitutional position once you are linked up with Krishna. The word yoga means to link with the Supreme. And bhakti yoga is the easiest method and the topmost method for linking with God. That is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's not that I'm saying. I am simply Krishna's messenger. I am simply here to repeat the message of Guru and Krishna. Now, Narada says, in the execution of pure devotional service, there is no question of lust. People ask, what is lust? Prabhupada gives an excellent definition of lust. Lust is the desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. No restrictions, just let me enjoy my senses. I don't care if it's right or wrong, moral or immoral. Who is the personification of lust? Ravana. If you study the character of Ravana in the Ramayana, you'll understand what is lust. So much so, Ravana, that lust, he was warned many times by his brothers, by his ministers, by so many people. He was warned, give up your attachment to Sita. Your attachment to Sita is what is destroying your whole dynasty. But Ravana, he was lust incarnate. He had to have Sita. There's a description in the Ramayana. Ravana had a very chaste wife, Mandodari. But every night he had a harem. It's right there in Ramayana. He was having so much lusty affairs every night with so many women. But Sita was driving him mad. And Sita would constantly say, no. And that attachment to Sita is what ultimately brought him down. If he had simply given Sita back, he probably would have been spared. But attachment. He wanted to enjoy to the fullest extent. Okay. You lose everything. All of his sons, one after another, killed. His army, killed. His city, Hanuman burned it to the ground. And finally, Ram, with his arrow, pierced Ravana. Blood came from 10 heads. Why? Lust. Renunciation in devotional service means to give up all kinds of social customs and religious rituals which are governed by Vedic injunction. Same thing Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita at the end. Krishna says, Sarva Dharman. This very interesting concept. Sarva Dharman Parityaja. This is revolutionary. What is Krishna saying? Krishna is saying, I'm not asking you to give up sinful activities. I'm asking you to give up all kinds of religion because there's only one real religion. Surrender to me. Because he says in that verse, Mam ekam sharanam. If you analyze Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly, you will be blown away by what is actually being said by Krishna. Sarvadaman parityaja mamekam. You surrender to me exclusively. Okay, some people don't, here in America especially, they hate that word surrender. That's all right. There's an alternate definition of sharanam, shelter. If you don't like the word surrender, fine. Shelter. The material world is so intense. We need shelter from the storm. That shelter is Krishna's lotus feet, who is right now taking a break from us. So we're going to feel separation from Krishna and Jagannath. But they will return once Arti begins. So Krishna is saying, take shelter of me. The famous pastime, Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill at the age of 7. And what did Krishna say to the residents? Don't be afraid of Indra. Don't be afraid of this rain and hail and wind. I have brought you an umbrella. I have lifted Govardhan Hill. Come under the umbrella. Take shelter. So there's a meditation. Take shelter of Krishna, just like the cows. Even the cows are smart in Vrindavan. Actually, the cows were the first to surrender to Krishna when Indra sent the rain. The cows were the first to approach Krishna. Then pretty smart cows there in Vrindavan. They knew, oh, danger, immediately take shelter of Krishna. And Krishna's Govardhan Hill was the perfect umbrella. For 7 days, 7 nights, Krishna stood there effortlessly. The description is there in Bhagavatam, like an elephant lifting a lotus flower. Is that difficult? Or a child plucking a mushroom. Is that difficult? For Krishna, lifting Govardhan Hill was a simple task. So that's my picture of how to take shelter of Krishna. Govardhan Leela. Renunciation also means being exclusively dedicated to the Lord and indifferent to what stands in the way of Krishna's service. So yes, 2 sides to renunciation, like a coin or my kartals. 2 sides. So renunciation is like a coin with 2 sides. One side, detachment from all that is material. Those kinds of verses are there in Bhagavad Gita. Repeatedly, Krishna is telling us to become detached from material sense gratification. But that's incomplete. That's only one side of a coin. The other side is attachment to Krishna. In fact, if you have attachment to Krishna, automatically you will be detached from material life. So more important of the 2, become attached to Krishna. When Prabhupada started his movement, there were no rules. No. All Prabhupada did to start his movement was sit under a tree in New York City and chant. And he also gave his new disciples prasad, Krishna prasad. And Prabhupada was an expert cook, besides being a pure devotee. So what was Prabhupada's methodology? He didn't introduce any rules and regulations. He wanted these new Western devotees first become attached to Krishna. Then once someone is attached to Krishna, automatically they will be prepared to do without this regulative principles and so many. And now in ISKCON, there's 1 trillion rules and regulations. I can't even keep up. Can you? So many rules, especially in deity worship. And each year they add more. Yes. So many rules and regulations. But it's not a problem if you're attached to Krishna. Practical example. You are all family members. You have children and grandchildren, right? So, automatically you want to take care of them. You have affection for them. It's natural. So, in the same way, we have natural affection for Krishna. It just has to be awakened. That was the mentality Prabhupada had, why he had no doubts about leaving India and trying to establish Krishna consciousness in the United States of Malachas and Yavanas. Why? Because Prabhupada knew they may be Americanos, but Krishna is also in their heart. And since Krishna is in everyone's heart, everyone has the potential to become Krishna's devotee. In my case, I became Krishna's devotee because of prasad. Because of prasad, that sealed the deal. My first experience was a transcendental experience. I jumped up. They gave me a little bit of Mahaprasadam. And as soon as I tasted it, I jumped up, give me more, give me more. And the devotee said, you have to come back tomorrow. So I started to go to the temple just for that delicious prasad. Because I was thinking, here in New York City, I can't find this food anywhere else. And when I used to visit the temple there in Brooklyn in 1973, as soon as I would approach Henry Street, which is where the temple was on a corner. And as soon as I reached the corner, I could smell the spices from the kitchen. And I knew, I'm home. The spices coming from the kitchen was like, come. And it would just completely surround me. And the first time I had a samosa, unbelievable. I said, what is this? And the devotee, that's samosa. Oh, what an experience. Nicely made samosa. Big, full of cauliflower, peas, spinach, curd. Let's take prasad. That prasad was too good. So, become attached to Krishna. Then all the rules and regulations, you'll naturally. I was trying to make the point. Once you have children, your mentality changes. And you no longer can be selfish, especially mothers. A mother cannot be selfish. She'll do anything for her child. My daughter is 45. My wife still will do anything for our 45-year-old daughter. Why is that? Love and affection. So, when you have attachment to Krishna, just like your children, you'll do anything for your child. You don't, even if it's difficult or you're going out of your way, you don't mind. Why? Learned labor of love. That's what children are. A learned labor of love. So when are you going to have children? You should have one son and train him to be a singer like you. Everybody, what do you think? Good idea? Just a suggestion. So, exclusive dedication to the Lord means giving up all shelters other than Him. This is another symptom of the residents of Vrindavan. If you read the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, which I have read many times in my life, you read the 40 chapters which deal with Vrindavan Leela. Time and time and time again, as soon as there's any difficulty, Krishna, we don't see the residents of Vrindavan taking shelter of anybody else other than Krishna. Each and every circumstance. Nanda Maharaj was being swallowed by a serpent. What did Nanda Maharaj? Krishna, save me. That is the symptom of the residents of Vrindavan. No shelter other than Krishna. Not that, okay, on Monday I'll worship this God, and on Tuesday I'll worship this God, playing the stock market. No. Pure devotees, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Krishna. Shelter, taking shelter of Krishna. Good example, Draupadi. She was being disrobed. What did she do? Hey Govinda, hey Gopal, save me. I'm not going to try to protect myself anymore. What can I do against this Dushashan? How can I protect myself? Hey Govinda. And because Draupadi had served Krishna by tying some cloth on his so-called cut, because she tied a little cloth to stop Krishna from so-called bleeding, because Krishna doesn't bleed, but if he wants to show it, he can. That's Krishna. Because of that little service, Krishna supplied Draupadi unlimited cloth. But she fully surrendered. Indifference towards what stands in the way of devotional service means to accept only those activities of social custom and Vedic injunction that are favorable to devotional service. So, there is a process called Sharanagati in the Bhakti Shastras. Sharanagati, surrender, full surrender. So, in that process of Sharanagati, the first two, I will accept anything favorable to Krishna, and I will reject anything which is unfavorable to Krishna. Radharani explains that best. What does Radharani say? If there's something I like, but Krishna doesn't approve, I reject that thing. And if there's something that Krishna likes and I detest, I love that thing. Just see the mentality of Krishna's greatest devotee, Radharani. She is the perfection of this surrender. She'll accept anything favorable to Krishna's service and will reject anything and everything which is unfavorable to Krishna's service. Narada now says, one must continue to follow scriptural injunctions even after one is fixed up in determined certainty that devotional service is the only means for reaching the perfection of life. In other words, even a devotee may achieve a very elevated state. The devotee won't advertise, come see me, I'm the most exalted. No. That immediately that would disqualify that person. No. The advanced devotee always remains meek and humble. And their advanced consciousness, they keep very private, because that's between the person and Krishna. Externally, the advanced devotee behaves just like a neophyte, following all the rules and regulations very strictly. According to Bhagavad Gita, the advanced souls do that just to teach by example, acharya. Acharya means one who teaches by example. There are so many teachers in the world. They're telling their students so many things, but in their private life, it's a whole nother story. We have a word for that, hypocrite. Say one thing, and then in their lives, it's a different story. So, a true devotee is not a hypocrite. They have reached an exalted status, but externally they present themselves as very meek and humble. Otherwise, there is every possibility of falling down. For as long as the body lasts, one should engage minimally in social and political activities and in such matters as eating. Let's do a little chanting, and then we'll have the japa class. Did you enjoy the class? Was it all right? Hari Haraye Namaha. Bolo. Hari Haraye Namaha. Go ahead. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Rama Shri Madhusudana. Gopala Hari Haraye Namaha. Everybody raise your hand and repeat after me. Hari Hari Haraye Namaha. Om Tat Sat. Thank you very much. May Krishna bless you, protect you, maintain you. I hope I see you actually Saturday. We have Namahat program on Saturday. If I'm still alive, I'll see you then. Hare Krishna.